My name is Anne Joutsenwerda. I'm a courses chair at UXPA International this year, and I'm with Jen Romano, who is our co-chair for the conference, and Thomas Watkins, and we are going to talk about how Thomas got into UX,
Hmm.
what is going on in his life, and about his course that he's going to present in the conference. So, if you, Thomas, will tell a little bit about your background and how did you came to UX?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm lucky to have a human factors background, which was able to lead me right in. But the overall story is early on, I kind of wanted a career in academia, was interested in cognitive psychology, and I was fortunate enough to get accepted into George Mason University in the early 2000s. And I didn't really know what human factors was back then, but it gave me a chance to get an early start of like, oh, you can like study tasks and design things for people and design environments and so on. Continued on in cognitive psychology. Left after my second master's degree, and then looking at what options were available to me back then. Now, this is around the late 2000s, and UX was less often very specialized. So you could have like a research background and get hired as a designer. You could
Mm.
do that today, possibly, but I think the expectations have changed a little bit.
Mm.
Um, and what you could get a job as, um, what was expected as a job from a UX designer has shifted a lot. I might
Mm.
mention some more on that
Mm-hmm.
later. I started my career working for a software vendor, doing some research, but mostly design. I rapidly trained myself on core design. It's like recognizing and understanding design patterns and different kinds of widgets and parts of a screen, what they're good for, what their
Mm.
advantages and disadvantages of different things, and then kind of went from there to kind of grow from there. So worked at a variety of different types of places. So software
Mm.
vendor, then software consulting as a design consulting agencies,
Mm.
and then eventually started working for startups, and I fell in love with
Okay.
that. Absolutely, for about 10 years. I've been working on and off with like lots of different
Mm.
startups, and that's kind of like an area, sort of a niche area that I enjoy. um
Mm.
yeah, just to ramble a little bit about the differences of what's expected now versus like maybe 15 years ago. I
Mm.
remember so now you can barely get a job as a UX professional if you're not also a pretty decent graphic designer. There's
Mm.
some exceptions, but you're expected to be a graphic designer. 15 years ago, that idea would be laughed out of the room. You couldn't
Mm.
get a job without a CV,
Mm.
way back in the day. Now you can't get a job without a portfolio. And you end up in these weird situations where researchers are asked to produce portfolios. Well, a portfolio is comes out of the art tradition,
Mm.
where artists who make visual art would carry around the big portfolios, and then that
Mm.
goes over into graphic design.
Mm.
So the fact that information architects and researchers are asked to show
Mm.
portfolios, I think, is problematic.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes the deliverables in those spaces are evaluated on surface attributes that don't matter, like how
Mhm.
good did your personas look,
Mm.
versus evaluating personas and things like that on other levels. Then there's whole areas. Now I'm really ranting, but there's whole areas of methodology that are now kind of left behind and lost, like task analysis. Barely anybody does it,
Mm.
and things like that. So one of the things I like to do with my career is bring a presence of psychology to think back to it. It's already there. People have written endless books about this stuff, but I think that's a little bit missing today, which is why I've got an upcoming podcast that'll be coming out later this year, a podcast show called The Design Psychologist, where I interview
Mm.
lots of different professionals who do applied psychology as it applies to designing the world around us.
Love it. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned that you fell in love with working in startups. So
Yes.
what made the kind of work in startups so special for
Yeah,
you?
part of it might Yeah, part of it might be like a personality match, or like the sort of green field, open field, the Wild West kind of a thing. But I think the for me, the ability to jump in and try to take things out of the ideas in the clouds, the vision, and trying to find structure in that early, doing early research, doing early testing of ideas, and sort of being part of that 0 to 1 is something that I like a lot. Now, there's a lot of risk in it. It's not as much rely money in it, so it's definitely got its cons if you want to go into that direction. But that's something that I like, being a part of the shaping.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in addition to your currently you mentioned your upcoming podcast, what other stuff you are doing right now?
Yeah, so do a lot of workshops here and there. For instance, the I don't know what if jump in it now. Workshop coming up, data visualization, for UXPA, the first day class, if it's still called that. Things change over the years. But then
Pre-conference
that's
courses, yes. Yeah.
pre-conference card. There it is. And so that really is even part of an effort that I had 10 or so years ago, 11 years ago, when I started teaching this at UXPA, where I think it's a area that should be sort of the territory of design psychologists, UX designers, and so forth, because it is within that purview, right? So you're taking data and you're saying, how can I fashion this data so it's most suitable for people's perception? And when you go to data visualization events, workshops, conferences, it's mostly math people and business people there, data people and stuff like that, but an absence of applied psychology there and designers. So that's something that I, kind of got super geeky and nerdy about, reading books by Stephen Few, Edward Tufte, and others, and said like, hey, let me bring this to my folks in UX. Here's some things to think about. Here's stuff that we can apply many of our methods and to this space. So that's something I'm excited to teach every year and this year at UXPA.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. So currently, like, what kind of clients or customers you are working with right now?
Yes. So yeah, I mainly work with my consultancy. I work with clients that fall into two buckets. Mainly, one is company-wise, large companies that are trying to do a digital transformation, small companies that are either trying to get something off the ground or meet some important early milestone. And so they're all across industries. I view UX as a very horizontal thing, right? So where our skills can cut across any vertical, right? Because we're bringing a method to the table and not, subject matter expertise, for example, which is more vertical. And so, so a lot of it is just helping the product visionary, the product owner, product manager, the CEO, the visionary, fill in the gap between their vision and what the developers need to build. So define anything in between and everything that is associated with that. So the research, to the extent that they're, kind of willing to budget that, the core information architecture and problem solving, all the way to the graphic design. Just helping visionaries be successful.
Okay. Like, kind of, it sounds that you are like also working on like, a lot of companies have vision, but then their strategy on achieving that vision doesn't
That's
always
right.
take in consideration how humans are behaving. So it sounds like you are working on that area as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that there's an overlap, interestingly, between strategy and design. And then anyone who's a designer and they get higher and higher ranking, they start getting more into the strategy of things. Business strategy, how does a product become the revenue generator for a company, and how does it become better at generating revenue? And so that's that wonderful relationship between the product managers, the product people, product strategist, and the UX folks, where they provide the market understanding, the vision, and we provide the methodology to how do you make this connect and resonate with people. And it's there's a lot of fun in that when you tap into that as a professional.
What do you find are the biggest challenges in connecting these people together?
Yeah, when you say connecting these people together, you're saying like connecting
product people, strategy people, UX people, maybe dev as well.
I mean, I find, I think when folks come together to work together, of these different sort of traditions, I like to use this concept, the team of rivals. This was, I don't know who coined the term, but what you want is systems. Like Lincoln's cabinet was known for this, where when Lincoln assembled his cabinet, he picked people who had fundamentally adversarial tendencies. And so oftentimes a great team will have that too. So if you have someone who, I'm the designer who's the stakeholder for users, right? It's almost like the People's Party or something. And then this person is the business, right? The product person, they have to be sort of realistic and pragmatic about what the business needs. And then the technology person is everything hanging together on the back end. And when you include those different elements at the highest level, you get a really, righteous tension, for lack of a better word of putting it, where you get lots of creative energy, things get figured out, the clashes of ideas that need to happen are able to happen when you have high ranking people in those areas together working on things.
Okay. Do you kind of like currently, like you have been in UX for some time?
Yes.
And what advice would you give to somebody who is just coming into field or switching career from totally different domain?
Yeah, my first piece of advice is get good at something that a team honestly needs, and then the extent to which you can get hired on a team. Oftentimes that's good because you're able to have some guardrails around you where everything isn't expected of you. But I think really a lot of times folks jump to how do I make my resume good enough to get hired? And I think that's a little bit of a cart before the horse, like especially when I go to events where there's young professionals trying to find work. I think it's much better to try to get good at one thing, strive to become a T-shaped person, right? That's the deep on one skill set, and then broadly competent on other skill sets, and get good at something. Like when I'm in a position where I'm able to hire people and I'm, I interview folks, I'm getting to know folks. The main thing on my mind is I've got a project that potentially starts in 2 weeks. I need someone who can do research and recruit people and run usability tests, or I need someone who can jump in and into Figma and do these certain tasks. Can this person sitting in front of me do that? And so I'm less impressed by if they walk me through their beautiful prototype, that it's easy, prototype, I meant portfolio. They want me through their beautiful portfolio, which it's much easier to make that kind of thing nowadays with all the templates available and tools, AI. Much less impressive. It's more impressive if you can walk me through how you do your process. And if it makes sense to me, and if I just ask basic questions along the way and it seems to make sense, it seems like you're able to get in there and do this. And I find that that's very often missing because folks, they really want to get hired, understandably, but they jump to I'm trying to put together a resume and a portfolio that's impressive. And I think there needs to be more time spent on building skills at specific areas to know that you can get hired on a team and day one add value.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more. Right. And it's a difficult thing about the portfolio when it comes to research, because like you're saying, so much of getting the next job is showcasing how you think, and can you do the thing? Can you put it together? What about if I throw this at you? Can you pivot? Right? Like, how do you think about things? But you're right. So many people spend time perfecting that portfolio and like the words on their resume and making sure they have the words in the resume that match the job description, but they're missing that component of like, who are you? What skill set do you have? And now show me, demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, one of the biggest problems I see with portfolios, this is probably the most common one, is that the examples in the portfolio revolve around projects, which are usually, made up projects from a boot camp. And they don't revolve around them and their skill set. And one of the first things I tell people when I'm mentoring them is you want your portfolio to revolve around what you know how to do. Not just these made up projects that nobody believes them in the first place. We all know they came from boot camps for the most part, and they might be mildly interesting. And even when people walk through it, they're describing this great project. So, okay, no, this isn't your boot camp presentation. I don't really care about the project. I care about what did you do on the project? What do you know how to do? Right? What kind of worked? What didn't? What would you do differently? But as from a hiring perspective, when someone's listening to you, they're trying to judge, can you do, they've got probably a specific set of tasks that's driving them and the team nuts because it needs to get done. And people are in meetings all day. Okay, here's a candidate. And they want to know, can this person do this set of things that I need them to do? That's what you need to convince them, not give a presentation about your projects.
Right. And not pass the test.
Not pass the test.
Right?
Yes, it's not.
That's the thing. It's like, what's the right answer? What's the right answer?
Yes,
it's like, no, just chill out. And like, how do you think about that? I want to know how you think.
Yeah. Exactly. So true. So true.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. So if you let's kind of discuss about the UXPA, the conference, and User Experience Professionals Association's annual conference will be in June 16 to 19 in Amsterdam this year. And you will be teaching a course, data visualizations for user-centered interfaces, dashboards, and presentations. So you're a little bit told about this kind of background of this course. But can you tell what is the thing that you are still excited about this?
I'm still excited because the landscape of data visualization has changed a lot in the years that I've been teaching about it, but there still are interesting problems. So when I first started teaching about this, the dashboards that existed out there were like really awful. And, just everything was, and the challenges were sort of in a different place. Today, it's really that there's just lots of data visualizations everywhere, and just the mere visualization of data sets exists on lots of different pages. A lot of it is styled better than it used to be. Gradients kind of, for the most part, fell out of style, and three-dimensional graphs mostly, and things that used to be popular, like gauge charts and other things like that aren't effective, fell out of style. But there's still this gap of, what do I do when I'm confronted with this problem of we need to display data to users? Because it's not just about rendering the data, it's rendering it in the right way, in a way that supports people's decision making. And one of the things is that it's largely, maybe like upper management says like, oh, I really want this beautiful pie chart here and this, that, and the third. And they kind of, put the cart before the horse and think of data visualization as kind of like an art project. But instead, you get a different win. Instead of going for, I want to do a demo where everyone's amazed by the colorful charts. Instead, if your win is people really get hooked on the dashboard we created
Mm.
because it's so useful and they can't imagine doing without it. That's the real win you want. And that comes from understanding people's goals, the decisions they have to make with the data that you're presenting, and what's important to them about the data, and you fashioning this data display so that it is truly leveraging their sensory, perceptual, and cognitive systems automatically as a human, and they're able to see the insights and not have to pick through things in order to get those insights. And that's the magic we want to create. And when I teach myself about this or teach in my workshops about it, what I enjoy is the increased confidence in something that's daunting, like data. Right. If someone, data sets and we need to visualize that, it's kind of initially daunting. But when you take a step back and you learn a few methods of sort of how to approach this and how to think about it, you feel more confident taking that on. And that's a win right there. Just being and this continues to be evergreen, despite the fact that AI can now do a very good job at creating data visualizations, because there's still the intent of, how are we going to display this? What type of chart? What is the mode of this? And so on. So I find it to be a very rewarding workshop. Usually gets a pretty good response too. And I'm looking forward to this one being interesting and engaging as well.
It's so important. It's so important. There's so much data viz done bad. So much. It's like, why? Why is it still bad? Like, once in a while you'll see something so good, and it's like, why don't we have more of this? I'm so glad you're teaching this. I feel like this is like, people need to learn how to do it, and like we need to like get it going. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It's just amazing that it's still not a like well done thing.
Yeah. Because the knowledge of how to make them good that's all figured out. That's actually been written about, published, tested, but it's just practitioners wide and far just tend not to know about this stuff. And it's kind of considered outside of the sort of general UX curriculum.
I can see that. Yeah. So people end up with their niche areas, things that get better and better. But then this is kind of like, people talk about it, but they're not actually practicing.
Exactly.
And I think it's also linked to what you said, that a lot of people are expected to be like graphical designers and make like visually impressive things, but then the content wise, it may not meet the needs of the target audience, especially if those people are low vision, have color blindness, dyscalculia, or anything like that. Like I've seen that those people have a lot of challenges with reading the data visualizations that are created to be beautiful and impressive.
Because when you research folks who have to interpret some complex but perhaps beautiful chart with a bunch of chords and lanes and things swimming all over the place of different colors, that's the kind of thing, to refer to the Daniel Kahneman system 1, system 2 thing. The first system is like, if you're in a sales demo, oh, wow, that looks really cool. And then they're not engaging with it, versus a person who has to sit with this thing and make decisions based upon it. Things that are impressive in one setting can be really annoying and a pain in a different setting.
Yeah, exactly. So know your audience.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned Tufte. Like he became famous by demonstrating where data viz was done well, right? Like he became famous on other people's graphics. We need an update, Thomas. Where's your updated data viz book?
Exactly. I'd love to come up with one. Until then, it's just the workshop, evangelizing data viz in the UX community. But every generation deals with this. Edward Tufte in the 80s, it was him versus the journalists of the time doing all the ineffective charts, and he did important ideas like data ink ratio, chart junk, or these are terms that he coined, and he invented a type of graph, the spark line. Then in sort of the more 90s, 2000s era, you had Stephen Few against some of the top graphic designers, and he invented the bullet chart and all of that stuff. So for folks who want to take the class, we're going to exercise actually creating charts. And I teach the class with the same way I trained myself. The way I trained myself is I took redesigns that experts did. And 15 years ago, I was like, you know what? I want to see if I can do. I want to see if I could start from the bad one they identified. I'm going to cover up the good one that they redesigned it into. And I'm going to try and rack my brain to come up with the best one. And then I looked at this, oh, okay, I see what I missed. And I kept doing that again and again and again and again until my answers tended to approximate what data visualization experts would have. And do the same thing for the class. So we either start off from a data set or a bad data visualization, and then try to take a few minutes to pull out a pen and kind of draw some options, going through some steps that I teach, and then share it as a class and say, like, I think it could have been this and it could have been that. And then I share my answer, and it becomes this really engaging, fun, safe place to learn something that is usually daunting, but then you can gradually build confidence and competence in the area.
Love it. And last thing is that, what do you look forward from a UXPA conference in Amsterdam this year?
I want to visit Amsterdam. I've never been there. I love anytime I get a chance to visit Europe, new places. I just love it when a cool, interesting place is picked there. Other than that, I look forward to all the great talks. One thing I've always loved about UXPA is that it's got a great balance between sort of the academic and applied. And we're also in an era where there's just lots of conferences that you maybe leave thinking that the speaker is so awesome and a rock star and a hero, but maybe you didn't learn as much as you were hoping to learn. In UXPA, there's lots of learning and just the fun and excitement of looking through the program and picking what I want to go to, and then sitting down for a nice talk is something that is very much part of my career and professional life. So I look forward to going to UXPA and joining everyone.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Where can people find you? If they, of course, in the conference, but if they want to keep in touch and stay in touch with you.
Yep. You can find me on LinkedIn, Thomas Watkins, 3-leaf, the number 3-leaf. Find my website, find me on LinkedIn, and just anytime you want to connect, reach out and drop me a note. Feel free to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
This was fun.
Look forward to seeing you in Amsterdam.
Yes. Look forward to it. Have a good one, guys.
You too.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.